out as I was finishing talking about When Breath Becomes Air, so I'm going to use that as a cue to stop talking about non-fiction and move on to talking about fantasy, and maybe that'll just be kind of like 2 episodes this morning, which is fair enough because I think the last recording was half an hour long, so nobody really wants to watch more than a half an hour video at a time. So yeah, I would recommend this one. So the other things I've been reading this week that I haven't been finishing has been fantasy, and I just wanted to show you because it fits with the theme. This little guy. So he's very, very clumsy, not very good at all, but I made him in pottery. So just to give you some idea of how long it takes to do any pottery when you don't have a kiln, I made the shape for this guy in July. He was biscuit fired over the summer, and then when I went back in September, I glaze fired him, or I glazed him. This is like an orange-red glaze, and it took until this week for him to get through the kiln to be done. So I do pottery like for 2 hours a week at a local like adult education centre. It's really, really great and I love it. But yeah, it can take a long time to get things through. But yeah, I haven't got a name for him yet, but if you've got any cool dragon names that you would like to share with me, just let me know because I will consider different names for him. So, the first one that I wanted to mention was The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, obviously by JRR Tolkein. I always, when I say that name quickly, I always stumble over the initials. So I'm listening to this on audiobook. It is narrated by Robert Inglis, and this was part of an agreement that I made with Bo that we would both listen to The Lord of the Rings on audiobook this year, and then we would be able to, it would be fresh in our minds and we would be able to talk about it and discuss it. So he listened to it probably in August and early September, so I use his Audible account, so we couldn't listen to them exactly at the same time, and at that point I was listening to, I can't remember what I was listening to at that point. Yeah, I was listening to some other book, and then when it came to October I was going to start this, but then I really wanted to participate to some extent in Victober, so I downloaded and listened to Our Mutual Friend, so I missed the kind of like, I missed doing it like straight after him, but now I'm trying to catch up. So I'm listening to this one on audiobook, and I've just got to The Flight to the Forge, so just after the incident on Weathertop. So this is one of my favourite books, and I would definitely, I think it was in my top 10 books tag that I did that was created by Jason at Old Blues Chapter and Verse, where he asked you to kind of like name your top 10 books, and I put the Lord of the Rings series in there, I'm pretty sure. I last reread it about 2 years ago, I think, and I was completely in love with the prose style. I just thought it was amazing, the depth and the richness of it. What I would have to say is it doesn't bear up well as an audiobook listen, and this is something that I found, that listening to something, reading something aloud or listening to it really shows up the flaws in the writing compared to reading it. So for instance, we've just had this whole long journey that they do before they even get to Bree, before they even meet up with Aragorn. There's this huge long journey that the hobbits go through to leave the Shire. And when I was reading it on paper, I really loved that, and I was really interested in it because it's cut out of the film, so I was less aware that I'd kind of forgotten about it. I was less aware that it existed. And I thought that it was this fantastic part where the hobbits get to like prove themselves, and they get to have this first experience of an adventure, and they get to realise for the first time the gravity of the quest that they're embarking on, and the risks that they're going to be taking. In a way that it's still kind of like a miniature version of what they're going to be going forward into. And it also kind of introduces us to the richness and the depth of Tolkien's landscape, that every corner that they turn there is something new, very much tied to the land. So this kind of like magic that almost seems to come up from the ground, like in the Old Forest and the Barrow Wights and so on, that the landscape and the magic system, or the myth system almost, are so richly tied together, and I thought that was fantastic. And listening to it on audiobook, I kind of just wanted it to get a move on, and I kind of felt like it was a bit like a Tom Bombadil Ex Machina, like every time there was a problem, it was just like, oh, hi Tom Bombadil. To be fair, that only happens twice, but yeah, it was just, I didn't necessarily have the patience for it so much as I would have thought that I would have done. I don't know whether it's because I'm feeling like I need to listen to this audiobook to catch up with Bo, or whether I'm listening to it because I'm listening to it when I'm like walking through the rain to get to places, so it's maybe less of an enjoyable reading experience than it would be if I was like sat curled up on the sofa reading it. But yeah, I'm definitely feeling like it's not as good as I remembered it being, which is really disappointing. And if it continues throughout the whole series, it might actually be significant enough for me to bump it down my list of favourites, which is upsetting because I do love the story of The Lord of the Rings, but maybe the writing is not perfect. But I mean, I love the richness of the detail as well, so I do love the writing. I just also don't. I'm confused, and kind of sad that I'm not enjoying it as much as I thought I would, but hopefully it will improve as we go along. The other thing that has been entertaining me while I've been listening to it is that we've got this incredible breadth of Tolkien's imagination, and he created this whole world, this whole system of myths and legends, and you know, this massive creation. But actually, it's all very much tied in like 1940s England, and it's like he could create so much, but at the same time he was still very like blinkered and restricted by what life was like in 1940s England. Like people going for a wash before supper. Like, do you go for a wash before supper? Because I definitely don't. I just eat my supper and then have a wash afterwards. But like in the 1940s, people would like dress for dinner and wash for dinner. So everyone's like, oh, quickly hop in the bath before you can have your tea. And it's like they're going on this incredible adventure, but the place that they stop is like a traditional English pub. Like there's dwarves and humans and hobbits all in the same pub, but it is a traditional English pub where you can just get like your private little dinner room if you're rich enough to afford it, and then you can go out into the bar and socialise. It's just like, it's so funny to have such an old England thing in such a fantastical world. Yeah, so it's a little bit amusing. That bit. So yeah, so that's The Lord of the Rings. Then another one, I was really, really hoping to finish this week, because I wanted to finish 4 books in a week, because, you know, don't we all? And that is Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. So Bo and I have been reading this aloud over the course of the year. So the whole series, that is. So we started with, I can't remember the name of the first book, Philosopher's Stone, just after Christmas. And we really, really want to finish the whole series in the year. And we have 3 chapters left of this. We've just had the Lightning Struck Tower. So, I mean, if you're familiar with the books, you'll probably know what that entails. It's kind of like the big dramatic moment. And then there's just like the resolution and ending left to go. The next chapter is called Flight of the Prince. So we're nearly there. And what I would say about this one is it is so much better than The Order of the Phoenix, but it's still not great. I mean, it's a really good book, and again, like The Lord of the Rings, it's an amazing story. It just falls down sometimes on the writing. But one of the things that has been really enjoyable about reading it aloud is when we hit a bit that is just stupid or really badly written, we can just stop and say, that was a bit ridiculous, wasn't it? And we can kind of, because we both love the series as well, we kind of talk to each other and rationalize why it's bad and try and think, oh, you know, like a reason why they didn't do that thing that like, why didn't they use that spell to solve that problem? Oh, well, maybe they can't use that spell because of such and such. So yeah, it's just interesting to be able to like discuss the little inconsistencies a little bit. And hopefully by next week I'll have finished that. We will have finished that, if that makes sense. And then we'll be starting on the last book, so we'll have just over a month to finish the last book. The most of the year was spent reading Goblet of Fire and Order of the Phoenix, because they just took so long, because they're both so much worse than the other books in the series. I don't care what anyone else says, they are just worse. And the last books I think are actually the best, so it's easier to read those quicker. Then the final one, I haven't been reading this, but this is Northern Lights, which is another of my absolute favourite series ever, and particularly my favourite fantasy series, and I'm holding this one up because we have got the first episode of His Dark Materials has finally arrived. That's a BBC adaptation of the story, where I think they're doing 10 episodes per book, so that gives them really plenty of time to go into it, and I'm really glad that they have given the series that much that much time to be able to explore it fully, because it really, really, really deserves it. And I think it's going to be really so much fun to watch. And everything that I've seen so far, like all of the trailers, all of the clips, all of the reviews have all been really, really positive. So I'm very excited to get to like watch the whole series and see the characters like actually get acted out and unfold. Because if you know about this series, there was the Golden Compass film a couple of years ago, and that was appalling. That was a truly abysmal film, and I watched it again recently to see whether it was actually as bad as I had thought it was at the time, and it was. It's just shocking that anyone could take a book like this that is so wonderful and turn it into such a poor quality film, because there's so much in here that is like visually effective that was just, yeah, really badly done. So I'm excited for the His Dark Materials series. So let me know if you're also watching that and you know what your thoughts are so far. And yeah, I'm hoping to get to see that as it gradually comes out. Yeah, and then also on this series, obviously recently The Secret Commonwealth has come out, and Bo is reading that at the moment. So I'm looking forward to eventually getting to the point of being able to read that. So thank you very much for watching. I know it's been a long one. The first video was a long one, and then this one's a little bit of a shorter one just about fantasy. So if you did stick through the whole of the 30 minutes about non-fiction medical books, you know, thank you. And I hope it wasn't too boring, and that you know, some of it was at least remotely interesting. And if you just came by for this short little fantasy one, well, you know, I hope you enjoyed that too. Then the other thing that I wanted to mention was I kind of have reached 500 subscribers, which I don't want to say that too committally, because if you're somebody who has got a YouTube channel and knows what these things are like, you kind of like, you're kind of always a little bit fluctuating, and I don't really know exactly why that is. I guess there's always just somebody unsubscribing at the same time as there's somebody subscribing, I don't know. Or maybe it's just like as they kind of process new subscriptions and so on, they kind of knock them, they double count them sometimes. So I kind of reached 500 subscribers maybe 3 weeks ago, and I was going to mention it, and then I immediately dropped back down to like 495, and I was like, oh. So yeah, I think more or less I've reached 500 subscribers. So that's a nice thing, and I just wanted to say thank you very much if you have subscribed, and thank you for kind of like you know, watching and talking and making me happy by yeah, participating in some way with comments and so on. And I wanted to do something to kind of market a little bit, so I'm not sure exactly what, but I was thinking of doing a tag, so maybe like a small booktuber tag, or like a kind of a tag that's going to be a little bit about me as well as being a little bit about booktube, but less about books. So yeah, I don't know, I haven't decided yet, but if you've got any really good tags that you want to recommend me to do, please do, and I'll probably do it as Bookish Breakfast next week. And then, yeah, I don't know, yeah, just let me know of any tag that you think that I should do. Or if you've got any other questions, if you want to just like ask me some questions and I could answer the questions like a Q&A, but I don't want to be like, oh, Q&A announcement, because I'm pretty sure no one's going to have anything that they would want to ask me, then yeah, let me know and I could tag them onto the end of the tag. Yeah, and just do it at the same time. So yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing if you have done in the past. And yeah, thank you for watching. Have a lovely week. Just wanted to show you my dragon again because I'm really pleased with him.